Welcome to Hindsight 2020.
Yep, bro.
Yes.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Hindsight 2020, a musical retrospective. I am your host, Francisco Flores here, Laredo's busiest music nerd. As always, I am joined by my co-host, Arnold.
What's up?
We've also got Grandmaster Flash, Orly Treviño. I mean, Valdez. I keep confusing with another Orly.
Damn, dude.
I confuse both of y'all's last names.
Damn,
Orly Valdez.
Last name, bro.
AKA Zagang.
Too busy learning music, can't even learn his friends' names, bro. All right, cool, bro.
Wow, dude. Shit.
Nah,
Okay, my bad.
You lost
dude.
weight, so you have a new name.
Yeah, you're a whole new person, dude. And
Yeah,
then you
dude.
cut off the hair, too.
You got a better last
dude.
name now.
You're
Yeah,
like
better
Orly
last name.
Treviño now. I don't even know who Orly Valdez is.
You like my
No, it's
boy
because
Aaron Juarez.
Arnold's last name is Treviño, so I was thinking about Arnold's name, and then I said Orly's. Anyway, we've also got a recurring panelist, friend of the pod, podcaster, art talk curator, community activist, soon-to-be ex-comedian, big sexy Roger Ramirez.
Man.
I'm a little pissed that he got a way better intro. Can I at least kind of like?
Hey, it's
like,
Orly Treviño. I mean,
yeah, I mean, sorry. By the way,
look at this guy, and then he just starts fucking Roger's dick.
and you art also, guys. Hold on.
I have one of your pieces in here. I'm in my new space that I'm turning into an office
It's
slash
the
studio slowly.
movies.
Look, I'll get it.
My boobies.
All right, well, let me go back. We've got a local comedian, artist, and the sexiest barista in the 956 area, Orly Valdez.
Thank you.
Can I just be
And
like,
the-
I'm a talking astronaut, dude.
on top of that, we've also got a first-time panelist, co-host of Aliens on the Border, podcaster, comedian, conspiracy theorist, Cloud Cobain, Josh Castillo. How's it going, man? Welcome to Hindsight 2020.
I'm out here slaying pussy and taking names. How's it going?
Great, awesome, great to hear, man. So, as always on this podcast, we talk about albums that we feel are culturally, socially, musically significant, and that have had, a massive impact on the current musical landscape. Today, we talk about Kendrick Lamar's rap magnum opus, To Pimp a Butterfly. To Pimp a Butterfly, released in 2015. This is his third studio album. It follows
Good kid.
Good Kid, Mad City, and then also
Great fucking album.
what was his first
Section
album?
8.
Section 80.
Section 80.
80.
Number one, yeah.
All right. So before we go into this track by track, let's get into our initial thoughts on the record, just to kind of like where we're standing right now. Arnold, what are your thoughts on To Pimp a Butterfly?
Well, I will say this is hailed as hip hop's one of hip hop's greatest albums of the modern time, if not all time.
I say all
compared to his previous works. This has heavy influence on jazz, funk, soul, and I'm digging it. You got contributions like Thundercat, Kamasi Washington, Fly-Lo, George Clinton of Parliament, Snoop, Ronald Isley of the Isley Brothers. What more can I say? This album's great.
All right. Great starting point. Orly, what are your thoughts on To Pimp a Butterfly?
My thoughts is not only on the lyrical aspect of it, which is like, for me, the lyrical aspect is like a whole different thing that I have to dive into. But the first thing I always do when I start listening to an album that has a great impact on me is just the production of it alone. And some of the beats on here are insane, are just fucking insane to me. There's even certain parts where they just like switch it up and they have like a completely different feel to them halfway through the song. The production from Fly-Lo and Thundercat, just like Arnold just said right now, like amazing fucking work. Like he said, it has a lot of soul, a lot of funk into it, a lot of even old school boom bap, fucking hip hop from like the 90s and shit. Fucking a crazy ass thing that he just was able to merge all together. So yeah.
All right, Roger, your thoughts?
I mean, I can't really just I don't want to echo what everybody just said, but it's I mean the same thing that they said. I feel like as far as I think when Good Kid, Mad City came out, it was this move of like having these like really heavy fucking bops, dude. Like, they were really great songs that really drew in an audience, and then this kind of like subverted the expectation of like where he was gonna go, because he went for something that was really heavily influenced on jazz and kind of offbeat rhythm patterns that didn't really like adhere to the typical like 1-2 rhyme that he was going in Good Kid, Mad City, or like regular hip hop in general. So it was surprising to me. I listened to this album. I happened actually the day that it released. I happened to have to take a quick trip to San Antonio and back. So I had the album with me and like by myself, being able to listen to it on the road the whole way over and back. And I was like floored the moment that I listened to it. I really hold this album in like high regards for like its listenability, but also its like ability to make people uncomfortable, because it does have some moments in the album that aren't meant to be written out as like songs that you're going to listen to regularly, not songs that are bops like in fucking Good Kid, Mad City, or in his new album Damn as well. So this is and not only that, this I want to touch on this later, but this also spawned his unreleased unmastered.
Yeah,
is that what it's
which was
called?
also fucking killer.
Which were they were like essentially B-sides or throwaway tracks to this album, and that album in itself is, I think, a fucking piece of work. Yeah, that's I love it. I still hold it like, if not top 3, it's, it has to be top 3. It's definitely up there. So yeah.
All right, Josh, initial thoughts. Where are you right now on this album?
What can I say, man? It's one of those albums that's pretty timeless. It's definitely, like Roger said, it's a turn that a lot of people may have not expected. But in hindsight, if you listen to one of the last tracks on Section 80, I think Soul's Outro, it kind of has the same tone, feel as this album. Like the little, I guess, like crumbs and stuff are there for something like this to happen, because I feel like, and this is more so a take at looking at To Pimp a Butterfly through the perspective of like the previous 2 albums, where you see like a melding of both the styles that he puts forward in Section 80 and in Good Kid, Mad City, to where the album has very deep cuts, To Pimp a Butterfly that is, but then it also has bops that like All Right, that are like you could just fucking throw them on. And even through how digestible and listener friendly that one song is, the lyrics, the topics, the stuff that he's portraying in that song is still just cuts deep as fuck. Like it's amazing the dualistic nature of it in those terms, where it's very deep and like at times uncomfortable, like an I and all those other songs that are along that vein. But one of the things that I really appreciate of this album, and this is true for a lot of like my favorite hip hop albums in general, is that it's kind of stitched together in a way where there's like somewhat of not just the overarching thing, but the way that there's skits more or less in between the tracks, and it just feels like an album, not just like other pieces of work or LPs or whatever the fuck that get thrown out there, that it's just like, here are songs, like they all have like a similar tone, I guess, and that's what connects them, and this is my album. No, this is like mastery of and command of that genre of music, to where it's a very cohesive project. And that's one of the things that I respect, and across the line with several different hip hop albums that are in my top 5 or top 10. I would say it's within my top 10. I don't know if it's in my top 5 per se, but then again, that's just me. And in any case, it's a great album. Definitely something that is a sign of the times, right? Never more relevant than it is now with everything going on.
Yeah.
And that's what creates like something that is, like I mentioned at the beginning, timeless, I think. That's my take on it so far.
Okay, yeah. All right, so I'm gonna get into my thoughts on the record real quick before we get into it track by track, and I'm gonna say I haven't heard this album in a while, but I'm also, I love this album. I remember loving it when I used to hear it more often. I love that it is such an uncompromising listen. It doesn't really give you a lot of wiggle room. It doesn't really give you what you want out of a rap album, but it gives you something you didn't know that you wanted. It presents to you what it has and nothing more than that. It gives you a couple bops, of course, but even that is not a traditional style song. I remember when this album came out, or the weeks leading up to it. I think this came out around the time I was at South by Southwest, because everybody was talking about the impending release of this album. And I'm going to say I ate my words because I was very skeptical of what this album was going to turn out to be. I thought that this was going to suffer from something I call the Nas effect. And what is the Nas effect? Nas came out with Illmatic, right? An amazing debut record, one of the biggest, most timeless rap albums of all time. And then his second album, It Was Written, was just as good as Illmatic, but history doesn't remember it as much as it remembers Illmatic. So an album to me that falls under the Nas effect is basically your follow-up has to be even better than your biggest record. If not, it just kind of gets swallowed in the shadow of the album that precedes it. And I thought Good Kid, Mad City was such a perfect album that I thought whatever followed it was going to suffer the same fate as It Was Written. It was going to be a great album for sure, but it was not going to be remembered because it would be overshadowed by Good Kid. And holy shit did I eat my words, because To Pimp a Butterfly is a completely different monster. And as we've all touched up on, the lyrical themes and all of that is just so relevant, especially more so in this day and age, that I'm very glad that I was proven wrong in terms to the cultural longevity of this album. So that's where I'm at. Let's kind of explore why this album is so relevant. What made this album such a landmark album in not just hip hop history, but music history as a whole. To do that, we get into this track by track. Let's start with the opening track, Wesley's Theory. Arnold,
hey,
as always, we start with you.
Real quick, Franny, I kind of wanted to ask, like, we all basically said we like this album, right? Like, there was no, like, kind of conflicting thing about it. Is there anything, I don't want to, like, hijack it, right? But is there anything that you guys disliked from it? Not a track specifically, but is there something that rubs you the wrong way about the album overall?
I think the fact that you have to listen to it, like, in my opinion, you have to listen to it from beginning to end. And there's only a few songs where you could just jump in and jump out. That's my only issue. You can't just start the album wherever you want and then, and jump out. You kind of have to keep going,
That's true.
That's mainly my issue. And also, like, I kind of wish at the end, like the very last track, the part where he's interviewing, I feel like that should have been its own track. But, I understand putting it with the last track, having an extended song.
Yeah, I do feel, I agree with Arnold. I do feel, to kind of elaborate on that point, I do feel like this album, by design, is very inaccessible. Like, there's not a clear landing point that, if you're going to show this record to somebody who has never heard it before, or who's never heard of Kendrick before, I don't think there's a song on this record that you can be like, oh, here, just listen to this one, and you'll kind of get the gist of it. Like, no, this has to be a full listen. But I feel like in that regard, this is a very polarizing album that, like, if you don't like it, you're going to hate it. You know what I mean? There's really no middle ground on this album, but that's a double-edged sword for me, because that is one thing that I could say I kind of dislike about it, but at the same time is something that as I mentioned in my initial thoughts, I do love the uncompromising nature of this album, but it does make it hard to use this as a reference point for anybody who hasn't heard of Kendrick before, and that's
Okay,
kind of
so
tough.
not introductory Kendrick.
Yeah, but it kind of sucks that this isn't introductory Kendrick because, goddamn, this is his best work. You know what I mean? Like
It's advanced Kendrick.
Yeah, this isn't Kendrick 101. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
And anybody else before we get into the first track?
This is not really about the album. This is more about like Kendrick as an artist himself. Sorry, it's like it's hard to like even like if you're not someone that's into music as a lot of my friends are, in the sense of deep diving into it, and they take a lot of like foreground that comes before the album, even before music. You have to understand the person itself. Like I personally like that. Like it's a deep dive into the person before you even listen to their fucking music, and then that itself is also a deep dive. I enjoy that because it just gives you way more substance to digest. But for a lot of like the greater public, it is sometimes too overwhelming. So I think that's my biggest issue with Kendrick Lamar as a artist, is that he is just so much there that it's like kind of like when I have an issue, this is like a completely different thing to compare it to, but like it's kind of like when someone recommends me like One Piece as an anime, like there's 1,000 episodes, bro, and there's like that's a lot of fucking shit to like get into, man. Like I have to watch 1,000 episodes. It's way too much for me personally. Kind of like that's like, oh, like Kendrick Lamar, you have to understand him so fucking well in order for you to like comprehend at least the way he's trying to perceive the message in his albums and stuff. I think that's my biggest issue as him as an artist in general.
Okay.
I only have just like the same idea that it's not like accessible, but also like I do feel that there are times where in this album, like the message is a little bit unclear. Like you do have to really read in. Like it was, how do I say this? It's not a super digestible album. You know, like in order for you to actually understand it completely, I think maybe this leads back to Arnold's point. You can't listen to it at any one moment and then just expect it to be like the message to be clear. You do have to kind of listen to it as a whole in order to capture the message. Otherwise, it gets kind of lost in the sauce. But I do feel like that it's not as accessible, or like the message isn't as readily presented. But yeah, that's my thought. I didn't mean to derail your shit. I was curious.
All good. Yeah. I think we've all spoken on this. Josh, do you have anything you'd like to add here, and anything about this album you may not like?
Not really, man. Honestly, I'm eager to dive into just like let's go in track by track.
Dope. All right, let's do it. Let's go track by track. Again, opening track, Wesley's Theory. We go around the panel here. Arnold, your thoughts on Wesley's Theory?
Well, you know, in this cast, we're suckers for openers and closers. This is a solid opener. It establishes the album's theme by describing the pimping of the butterfly. And in the song, you got a good sample of Boris Gardner's "Every N-Word Is a Star" from the 70s movie of the same name, which at the time intended to change the perception of the N-word in Jamaica. So you can kind of see this maybe like mirroring themes. I'm not sure. Maybe take your way with that for this whole album. This song is obviously a metaphor for how black artists are pimped in the entertainment industry, and you have Kendrick talking in the perspective of a black entertainer or any black celebrity, while in the second verse you have Uncle Sam or Capitalist America giving their expressions, and you also have the refrain with Thundercat and George Clinton, and whenever I hear them say we should never give these N-words money, I always feel it as like them. It's like not. I wouldn't see them as Uncle Sam or Capitalist America. I kind of see them as people who are not entertainers or people who are jealous of when black people become famous or gets sort of revenue or just get money in general. So I feel like that refrain does a good job showing that this is the views of like maybe white America whenever they see a black man successful. And honestly, the instrumentals in this song, it's a good solid beat, head bobby, awesome opener.
All right. Orly, your thoughts on Wesley's theory?
I mainly like just the production, like how you said the beginning. I think the first 50 seconds is that sample from Every N-Word's a Star, and it's like it's pitched down a little bit, so it gives you like a really slow like feel, and you're kind of just easing into this field of view or whatever that he's about to present to you, and then it just shoots you straight out when the beat drops, and it's just like this like heavy bass driven like beat that's just like super funky, just like just so much like I imagine this is kind of like might be kind of fucked up to imagine, but I imagine like a black guy wearing like with a bass like up to his chest, just plucking at the bass and like head bobbing,
like George Clinton.
Yeah, George Clinton, exactly. Just fucking playing it, and there's just such a good fucking like beat that is that just like it's Thundercat.
Thundercat,
yeah, or Bootsy
crazy.
Collins.
Yeah, but Thundercat has that crazy like crip fingers when he starts like shredding and shit. but yeah, like it's just really the beat alone is just really fucking amazing to me. That it just shoots you out straight away into the whole theme of the album, and then of course like the lyrical aspect of the whole thing. But it's a really great like introduction to what you're about to experience in this whole album. That's my thought.
Okay. Roger, your thoughts on Wesley's theory?
Oh,
You're muted.
You're muted.
Can't hear you, bro.
Sorry, I mute my shit because sometimes my AC kicks on and it gets loud. Like both of these guys just mentioned, it's a very good introductory album. I mean, introductory track. Everything you guys mentioned, I really can't like speak on any more than that. You basically laid out the groundwork for it. It's all a very nicely packaged intro, but also kind of a scary illusion as to what he's going to talk to. I think it does kind of start off on a very easy foot, and I think the idea is that this like introductory song that kind of like hits you with like a little bit of funk. When you get that in there, it kind of gives you like a little like pep in your step. Like, all right, dude, this is gonna be fucking cool. And then you'll start hearing in the next tracks that nice little like scatter rhythm that's gonna like completely throw it off. Not throw it off in the bad way, but like the purpose was to make you uncomfortable, right? So I think that that setup, it's a perfect setup. That's about it.
Okay. Josh, thoughts on Wesley's theory?
What I wanted to get into a little bit more was like the actual roles that he's setting out, right? Like, 'cause we get to see, I guess the way you put it, where he's setting up the characters that are going to play out across the rest of the album, and understanding who those characters are or what he's trying to portray is something that he, or not he, I guess per se, but that is it's in that lofty realm to where it's open to your interpretation, right? Like a lot of people can look at it from the sense of Kendrick himself in that first part of the verse where he's talking about, what the fuck did he say? $1 million check, uneducated, but $1 million check at the end of that first verse or something like that. And I think that one or two lines is like a perfect
hit the press with the Cuban link on my neck, uneducated, but I got $1 million check like that.
Yeah, exactly. Like that little snippet right there is exactly like the sentiment of the entire song, to where it's like, is it really like Uncle Sam's fault if the entertainer, right, or black people specifically, if you want to look at it in that way too, are playing into that hand, like leaning into it, but also they're leaning into it from a lack of understanding or a skewed perception to where that is paramount, right? Like being fresh, being fly, being like flaunting shit, flaunting wealth. Like if I don't think that's so much a product of just like the entertainers that are now making music, and I'll get into that in just a second, but it's also very, very much so like the American dream, quote unquote, or what a lot of people get sold on, you know, like growing up. And is that the manifestation of what ankle the fuck Uncle
Ankle,
Sam is that? El Ankle
Ankle
Sam?
Sam.
Is that the manifestation of what Uncle Sam is? Right, like it's like a prison for your mind to where your what you hold or what you see has value is all this external shit outside of you when um, the real like this is gonna sound cliche as fuck, but the real treasure or the real light, the real thing is actually something that's inside of you and inside of other people that you
It's in your heart.
manifest when you connect, right? Like as opposed to externalizing all these things and wearing like fly watches and all this other shit. But I feel like it's a dissection into that and an acknowledgement of that one line saying that like I don't understand that is the way. So because I don't understand, I'm gonna lean into this role, right? And then Uncle Sam in the second part of it is like, well, what do you want? A house, piano, a guitar, 40 acres and a mule, all that shit. And then I like that shit like comes up in so many other different songs, and it's just like
Yeah,
such a
Yeah,
good
and
fucking
not only that, like, wait, it's gonna. Well, I'm already cutting in head into the album, but like, you know, also it's like that perspective of like it's the same character, but it just switches its name to Lucy, aka like a Lucifer. So I think that's like,
yeah, and it's funny to see because like you see a lot of different artists go through something like this to where they paint the battle between themselves and like the evils, right? Like Jay-Z's fucking classic track on Reasonable Doubt and shit, where they're fighting like they're for their literal soul, whether it's like a fucking analogy for something or like they're literally in a fucking contract with Satan. Who fucking knows, right? Like that's always the thing. That's always some of the lore that surrounds Hollywood and stuff like that. Like you have to sell your soul and be a part of the Illuminati and all this other shit, right? And I think that's a good like not overt use of that one theme, but you see it a lot in different artists. And to connect this to one of my favorite artists, and probably this one is for sure in my top five, uh, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, right? Like
ooh,
that.
fuck yeah. Hold on,
Like
give me one
that's
second.
like a,
Y'all keep talking.
yeah, like that's a literal like you've seen if you look at Kanye's work, you've seen him evolve into like this very dark, embracing like the most base fucking instincts that one has, just talking about like sex and fucking betrayal and loss and all this other shit. And I feel like those sentiments are echoed in like a certain sense, at least in the very beginning here with Wesley's theory, and when that Uncle Sam character gets introduced, right? And he's like, I can give you all of this in exchange for all of you, right? As opposed to like using yourself for, or not using yourself, but like sharing yourself with others, excuse me, and hit the fucking mic, and like creating those bonds that really actually mean something versus all this external bullshit.
yeah,
Okay. Yeah, no, I really love that interpretation of the track. I love how in depth you got in on that. Let me get into my thoughts real quick before we move on to the next track. As Arnold stated in the beginning here, we are sticklers for album openers and album closers. This is a perfect setup for the rest of the album. Possibly one of my favorite album openers in recent musical history. I love the feel of the song. How once you get past the actual sample that starts off the track, I feel like this is purposely a really chaotic sounding song. There's a lot of layers to it, a lot of things just kind of piled on top of each other, and that just kind of adds to what I feel is like this internal struggle, this internal chaos, about trying to be, what it means to be a black entertainer in America, and how Black culture is kind of it's like the hot commodity right now. You know, everybody kind of rips off of black culture. You know, black slang is like the predominant slang in American society. Black fashion, all of that is kind of just appropriated by like everybody. And you know, I feel like this album, the instrumental, the kind of chaotic instrumental of this song does a lot to reinforce that internal, what I perceive to be that internal struggle of either feeling, you know, a semblance of like guilt from profiting from selling out your culture versus, you know, just kind of being cool with it because of the benefits you get to reap, you know. So I think all of this blends in really well together. It's a really funky track. I love the instrumental, love it lyrically. Great introduction to the record. When I finally got to listen to this album again, when we were getting ready to review it, I was immediately reminded of why I love this fucking record. And I was so excited to just hear the rest of it. So those are my thoughts. So moving on from there, we're moving on to the second track, which is actually one of the highlights. And this is just a fucking interlude. So I'm very excited to talk about this. We're getting into For Free. Arnold, your thoughts on For Free?
You know, the beginning of the song, I love how it's the seamless ending of Wesley's Theory. You have the crowd, like the loud crowd, and then you get hit with the sax for the perfect closing to the opener with a great start to this interlude. I love that, and you know, I hope Roger likes this saxophone at least. You know, because he really shit on saxophones in Carly Rae Jepsen. So, but that's besides the point. I digress. This song, you know, I like how similar it is to Tramp by Otis Redding. So you can get that, you kind of appreciate that nod to Otis that Kendrick had put in this song. You know, you have a girl attacking Kendrick for not making it. She basically rants on how in America, like it's black men can only be successful by becoming like mega stars, like rappers, superstars, sports stars, a stereotypical gold digger. And then you kind of get that glimpse in Tramp by Otis Redding as well. And I like the theme of the song that Kendrick is attacking the belief that pussy costs money, but dick is free. And when, you know, it shouldn't be in his mind, and honestly, it shouldn't be in general. So I love the delivery Kendrick has. It's very reminiscent of black art poets like Gil Scott-Heron. And for listeners who don't know about Gil Scott-Heron or any black art poets, I would recommend The Revolution Will Not Be Televised. That's a good track to listen to get into this and understand the delivery and how he's referencing like everything in this.
All right. Orly, your thoughts on For Free interlude?
I'm gonna be honest, like the main thing I'm gonna be touching on throughout this entire album is just the production alone, because that's like the driving force of me just continuously going back to this fucking album. It's just like the insane jazz in it, like just like how he said, like you get introduced to this like a beautiful sax. It's just like it has such good rhythm and stuff, and then when the drums kick in, which is like a huge thing in jazz, like obviously the main driving rhythm in jazz is like the drummer, and also for the it keeps up the tempo. Sorry. So like just when it starts going to like the traditional jazz, just being experimental and like fast paced and offbeat and just fucking driving you insane, and then that's when he starts like he basically snaps at that point and he starts like listing off all his reasons why his dick shouldn't be free. And there's a fucking line that I love so much in the song where he says, I have it here. He's like, pity the fool that made you the pretty and you prosper. The titty juice and pussy lips kept me obnoxious. And I think that's so fucking funny. Because like when it's just like when the pussy's good, you know, you fucking like you just become stupid basically. And it's just so fucking good that he's like using these like they're normal words that everyone uses, like obnoxious, like pussy and juice and shit like that. Those normal words, but the way he structured it all together just makes it this like profound thought, even though it's like not really a profound thought. It's just more like the way he structured it and the way he delivered it was just so fucking good that you're just like, oh shit, like that's exactly how I feel sometimes. Like he put it in like when when you get in good sex, like you just become this like blind male sometimes. But yeah, like I really like the whole driving force, and I like how in the very end, the girl just like kind of like is shocked that like he just told her off all this shit. So she's like, "Oh, I'm gonna get my Uncle Sam, and I'm gonna fuck you up." And I was like, "Oh shit!" Like that's like another nod to like the character in the beginning, just basically going back to the whole everything that Josh was saying in the beginning. Just bringing that whole character and just like that whole endless cycle of like black entertainers or just black people in general in this like mental prison of it all.
All right, Roger, your thoughts on For Free?
I really like how it starts off going. I was like, no, yeah, I really dig the saxophone at the beginning of this one. It's not a repetitive like munchy thing. It's just it gets out there and it starts off like it's like a nice little like bringing like reeling you in, and then the fucking chorus hits you, the fucking choir and shit, and and that to me I was like fucking shocked listening to this while I was going, and it made me fucking smile so much, like holy shit. And then sure enough, that starts fucking coming in, and you start hearing he's basically like freestyle, not freestyling. What's the word? Like a spoken word. He's doing spoken word of
doing one of those
poetry. Little, getting in there with the.
He's basically scatting with words.
Yeah, and so as soon as he's hitting all those things, and he's just topping off with "this dick ain't free," and then he starts going off over and over, and it's just like it's such a what I really think started off the personality to the album. The very first one is very much an introduction to the first song was very much an introduction to the album in general, and like the overarching theme that you're going to see in here. While this does contribute to it, it does also give you a little bit of that like sass that you're going to be seeing from the characters that he's cultivating and the characters that he's creating, and at the same time his own voice and personality that's going to be very much different from what you were already introduced to in GKMC. So I really enjoyed it. I'm not going to say it was like my favorite on the album, but it's definitely like top 5. I at first, my first impression to it, I was kind of like, okay, that was a little weird. I mean, that was cool shit, but it was a little weird. And my second listen, I was like, all right, it's key. I don't feel like there's any song on this album that has no purpose on it. So
yeah, that's no fat to the album.
Exactly. Yeah. There's no. It's all substance. So I really enjoyed it. I want to say it's probably one of my like top 5 on the album. But yeah,
it made me feel like I had a bigger dick than I actually do. Felt great. I called my girlfriend at the time and I was like, "Fuck you, take me out on a date, bitch." Not get ready to get taken down. Nah, but again, man, it's just like so masterful, dude. Like it's insane that someone can be this good with words. You know what I mean? Like to be able to take like a snapshot of an idea and then externalize it so accurately to the point where like it's just a perfect marriage of the spoken word style that he's using along with like the off key like or different time signature of like the jazzy fucking sax and the drums. Just it's insane, man. And I feel like what I take away from it is sort of like he's acknowledging the ignorance that was initially brought up in the beginning and being like, I'm gonna take everything I can get with this, the dick being like the talent or whatever the fuck, you know what I mean? Like the whatever the other person talking to Lucy and Uncle Sam is, whoever that may be, making or not taking it light and just being like, I'm gonna fucking fuck you for all it's worth. You know, this dick ain't free at the end. You're gonna pay for it. You're gonna pay for pimp me. I'm gonna get paid. That's like my biggest takeaway from it. And at the same time though, like it also brings another thing to the table, which is like the I guess the dynamic of like the male and female relationship. You know, like where there's not every female, but like a lot of women have a certain expectation that a man, right, like what they perceive to be a man is going to bring or do specific things, right? And then now, I mean, 5 years removed from this song, fast forward into the shit show 2020 has been, it feels like more and more so like these quote unquote gender stereotypes or what have you, or maybe like falling apart, but there's still that section of women. And again, this is just super general. I'm not referring to anyone that may be listening or you, if you're listening right now, whoever you may be. But there's certain expectations that we put on a man, and it's like not really acknowledged, right? Like and this is going to sound stupid, but the plight of or the weight that we carry as men, right? When you're always expected to be this one thing, whether you're always expected to be the oppressor because women and feminism and all this other shit, or you're always expected to be like Scott Mescudi. Okay. You're always expected to be, I don't know, like the, what's that?
The provider.
Right. The provider, or just it's kind of weird for men, not weird, but it's not necessarily something that's prominent where
Mm-hmm.
men like face their feelings and actually like talk it out, or like, and I don't know about you guys, but in my experience at least, it's
crying for women.
Yeah, like it's I internalize a lot of shit and end up just not necessarily divulging everything in a certain sense, and I think it's probably because I grew up with the whole idea of like machismo and shit, especially coming from like a super traditional Mexican household, and I feel like this acknowledges those things in a certain way to where it asserts that a man does have value in a society today where everyone wants to say like, oh, you're a fucking cisgender male, like shut the fuck up, bitch, like we all fucking matter, you know what I mean? Like not just whatever fucking pronoun you want to assume today, and I don't have anything against that. That's cool if you want to do that shit. I'm just saying we all fucking matter, not one matters more than the other, you know what I mean? And I feel like this song kind of drives that home a bit, at least for me in my interpretation of it. And it's not afraid to say like my masculinity is beautiful and my male energy is permeating the cosmos with all this positivity, king shit. You know what I mean?
My masculinity is beautiful.
Yeah, embrace it.
I feel that.
Yeah, dude, you just like it made me lose all my chances. All y'all have like girlfriends, bro. I'm like single. You just like all my chances of getting any like.
Nah, dude. If you embody an alpha male, you'll attract an alpha bitch, dude. That's all. That's what it is. You don't want to date
I'm a
a
pussy,
bitch,
bro. That's the problem, bro.
Then you're gonna attract a pussy ass bitch too.
Hit me up, bro.
Real quick before we talk about beautiful masculinity and alpha bitches, let me get into my thoughts on the song.
Please do so.
This is actually one of the highlights on the album for me, probably top 3 songs on the record for me. I absolutely love this track. I like how we all have different interpretations of it. I found this to be more for me, the female character in the beginning of the song, more than being, an exploration of the male-female dynamic when it comes to dating. I felt that the female singer or the female poet or whatever at the beginning of the song is really just America's expectations of black men, black successful men, and then Kendrick comes in, the second quote-unquote verse, and that's just, to me, my interpretation is what the black community is asking of America, everything they haven't gotten that they've been promised, even though this country has been built on the backs of black labor, like there have lines in there like, I need 40 acres in the mule, not a 40 ounce in a pit bull. Just you're giving me way less than what I've given you type deal, and it also represented an at least
Franny, he got hacked.
Did we lose Franny?
Yeah, dude. The FBI's at his door. I can hear him.
His internet.
He got swatted, bro. He's getting swatted.
The FBI found him his last cast.
Yo, how long are these episodes? We're on track 2. We've been on here for 45 minutes.
I feel like we should just bang this one out 3 hours, honestly.
I don't have 3 hours. I need some more workout before I get punished 3 times.
All right, I think we should just go ahead and start talking about King Kunta, because the fact that Franny is in limbo, so. He's in the worst position. So anyone who's watching, who's listening just to the audio, you need to watch the video to understand. So he's out. He might come back in. He's into the stream. Hold on, let me add him.
There he is.
Here's the boy. All right.
Hey, what's up? Sorry, I keep having internet issues. I don't know what's going on.
We're just gonna go straight to King Kunta, bro.
Yeah. Let's get into it. I'll finish my thoughts on this shit later. King Kunta,
all right.
Let's hear it.
All right, so I will say King Kunta, probably my favorite track, or at least one of my favorite tracks in this album, just because of the pure head bobbing funky beat that's into it. You got Kendrick referencing Kunta Kinte from the Roots miniseries, and the title of this track is kind of like an oxymoron, because you have Kendrick both oppressed like a slave by the record label, but at the same time he's a king. He's well off, paid, one of the best rap artists, and he's claiming what's rightfully his throne. Fuck Drake and fuck everybody else who try to come, take his spot. That being said, I love this song. I'll let y'all continue.
All right, Orly, your thoughts on King Kunta?
Again, just love the fucking beat, bro. It is one of those. I agree that a lot of these songs in the album you can't just jump in and jump out. I feel like King Kunta is one of those songs that you can just jump in real quick and listen to just one off, and just to enjoy the rhythm and the fucking flow of himself. Of course, you can deep dive into the actual lyrics. But yeah, I just feel like the beat's just so fucking good and quick and just so funky. It's just it's like you can clearly see the what's it called, influences of like funkadelic from like the 70s, or maybe like the what's the fucking people called? Hold on, I have them here somewhere.
The Village People?
No.
YMCA.
The influence of like P-Funk and shit like that, like just like real, even though it's just like it's a funky beat, it's a real atmospheric in a sense of like it surrounds you in this way of feeling in just the beat alone. And then there's a back line, I guess. Like, it's not Kendrick's voice, it's another character in the song where he says like, what happened, K-Dog's back in the hood again. Saying basically like he, in my interpretation, is that like King Kunta, like Kunta Kinte becomes a king even though he is a slave. Like he's a king in his peers' eyes of like him being in back in his like old hood and stuff like that. Like they see him as a king and he feels like a king because he feels like he's the best rapper and stuff like that, and he deserves all this notoriety for everything that he's done so far. And it's just driving that ego of his in some sense, which he feels like he should fuel because of how oppressed he is, or how he feels so oppressed in his own music that he is with the label and stuff. That's my thoughts.
All right, okay. Roger, your thoughts on King Kunta?
I again, like you guys are pretty much hitting like the nail on the head. For me, I guess if I'm going to add anything different than to what these guys have said, the main thing to me is that this is the track that establishes the overarching, concept or that you're going to start hearing throughout the rest of the album, which is the um, the misusing the influence one, where he's basically starting off that interview, right? Like, this is the first time the first instance that you hear that. Who's is that mine? Oh, I hear like a rattling sound. Oh yeah, it was already. The what's it called? Yeah, AJ, I bet you were conflicted, misusing the influence. As soon as you start hearing that, like, that's the immediate, like, introduction to what you're going to be, or what becomes important later on throughout the album, because it gets reused like multiple times. Also, like, this is the last stage of, like, the caterpillar, right? Because you start seeing like, some people have talked about, like, hitting the the whole "To Pimp a Butterfly," like the actual title of it, like the album, from what I've read and what I've interpreted as, it's structured like from Wesley's theory to Kunta. You have the caterpillar phase, right? He's expressing all of these, like, negative kind of views, the things that make him, like, kind of what you call, like a victim to the culture that they're creating for his how do you say it? Like, the system, man. Like, that's what it is. The system that he's fighting against, but also profiting off of, right? And I think that little, like, caterpillar part, this is the last part you start seeing about that. Afterwards, you start seeing the afterwards you start seeing the what is it, the cocooning phase, where you start hearing about things that change a little bit in terms of theme. You'll start hearing it in the next track.
Okay. Okay. I got this fixed. I think I'm back on permanently on the laptop. Josh, so sorry about all that. Josh, your thoughts on King Kunta?
I feel like it's an embrace of the ego, like, completely, and utilize. So Kendrick in all his albums, he is used like different, almost like different personas in different tracks. And again, we see the same thing here, where he's embodying two different points of view: Lucy, or Uncle Sam, and the black entertainer, or himself, right? And in this case, it's like a total embrace of his own ego, and also acknowledging other shit that is going on, along with, like, the metaphor that he's putting forward, right? Like, where he's calling out other rap artists that are calling themselves rap artists but don't write their own lyrics, or, like, shit like that. That's the most specific one I could think of, that I feel like every time I listen to it, I'm like, yeah, he's talking about Drake for sure. And
yeah, no shit. They're rapping with a ghost rider.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, dude,
happened. I was gonna kill a couple of retards, but they did them to themselves, dude.
No, it's not
No?
what he says.
Yeah, he says N-word, but I'm being a better person in 2020. So
No, he says rappers. It was gonna kill a couple of rappers.
Okay, I was gonna kill a couple of rappers.
Yeah, he just made it way worse, bro.
Yeah, no
Okay,
shit,
all right,
man.
whatever. I was gonna kill a couple of rappers, but they did them to themselves.
Yeah, there's like everybody's suicidal. They didn't even need my help. This
Yep.
shit is elementary.
The shit is elementary, dude.
Elementary. I thought it was elementary. My bad.
Yeah, man.
No, you're right.
Yeah, you're right. Elementary.
Elementary or elementary?
It
But yeah,
matter.
Elementary, bro.
Elementary, Watson.
I can
But,
go off about how you can say elementary in a few different ways, but we'll save that for another day.
Yeah.
Alright, so I'm gonna make a little executive decision here. My internet is being super unstable, so Arnold, I'm passing the hosting reins onto you just in case I lose it again. So
All right, I got you.
yeah, I'm gonna go into my thoughts on this track. King Kunta, I love it. I love the beat on it. It's super funky. Lyrically, I do love the idea, again, the juxtaposition of, the name Kunta, of course referencing Kunta Kinte, and him being a slave but then being a king, King Kunta, and the lyrical themes of being a king to your neighborhood, but the real, like, why is it that you're so big in your community, and the reason is because you come from an impoverished community. So that's the only, kind of like those themes of that I think were being touched up on in the opening tracks. This whole feeling of like, what is the cost of your success? Like what is the weight that comes of that comes from your success. And I also like the introduction of the spoken word poem that unravels over the course of the album. I like that this is the establishing track for that. And yeah, I feel like all of you touched up on some of the major points of on this song. I don't know if I have much to add.
All right, so we're gonna go to the next track, and I'm gonna put it up here. Institutionalized, and not to be mistaken by institutionalized by suicidal tendencies, which is a phenomenal
great fucking track.
Which is a phenomenal track, but this is even better. So you get a jump, a big transition from a high that was Kunta Kinte to this song, which starts off with a Kendrick with Kendrick in a, I guess, Quasimodo-esque voice. If hip hop heads know Quasimodo, you understand that reference. And that's in part one, and then you get a beat switch up that turns into a smoothie jazz, slow to mid tempo tune in part two. I will say I do like all the references that he has in this whole album to artists, and obviously the zoom 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 part, you'll get that from the best b-boy song ever, Planet Rock by Africa Bambaataa. And just to talk about the song in general, you have Kendrick realizing that his past, be it Compton or Mad City, is still around him, and he speaks about how people are conditioned and programmed by the thoughts of getting rich or die trying. I'll let you guys talk about everything else. I just like to talk about the main themes of the songs. So Orly,
sorry. The beat switch is so fucking cool. I'm a fucking sucker to any fucking song that has a beautiful beat switch into it, like for Frank Ocean's Nights and so on and so forth. I really like, but this one's actually one of the few that I really, really do like the some of the lyrical aspects in it, and I focus more on that in this song than almost any other song. Like, I pulled up the lyrics here, so I won't fucking butcher it. But after the whole zoom zoom zoom, there's like life to me is like a box of chocolate, quick poke roll, something for something. It's obvious. Oh shit, the flow's so sick. Don't swallow it. That quick little 3-bar line. It's just so fucking cool that, basically saying that, touching on the other subjects, tit for tat, I'm gonna give you this, and then in return I get the fames and the riches and whatever comes with becoming a black successful artist and stuff. So I just really enjoy that he touches a lot on that in this kind of basically it's following through from King Kunta, saying that he's this king of rap and stuff like that, and then this next song is basically touching on the actual process of becoming that. I'm giving you my raps, my music and stuff like that, and I'm giving you my soul, and giving you myself, so I could just become this king. And I feel like that's at least how I interpret that song. Those are my thoughts.
All right. What about let's hear from Roger.
I was just listening to this. Whenever you guys start talking, I put it on the background a little bit low so I can kind of hear a little bit and just remember. Not remember because I listened to it, but this one right here is one of the most memorable ones for me. I really do like that little switch up in the beat that happens at the very beginning. I also really like the lyrics just in general. I think it's a little inspirational when you hear that part of it, that the shit don't change till you get up and wash your ass. That has always kind of inspired me, because I think around the time that I was listening, No, around the time that I was listening to this album, I did have issues with like anxiety and depression, and I was not able to mobilize as much as I wanted to. And I think when I started listening to this album, was kind of the time that I was kind of starting to get out of that little haze. And if you've ever dealt with like any sort of mental illness, you'll understand how that feels. So I think this actually, and I guess to kind of tie it in and why it started becoming a little more, I guess, relevant to me. This is the part where it starts making that transition that I was just talking about. When you start hearing themes like being institutionalized, the next one called These Walls, and You, which is like we use my favorite track when you start hearing the struggles with whoever's doing their loud keyboard, chill. So the what's it called? You start hearing this.
I think it's Franny.
I think it's Franny. Yeah.
I'm dude.
You're what?
I'm not doing anything. I don't have fucking internet on the laptop.
Oh,
right.
Anyway, so these themes. Sorry, I get really distracted. These themes that you start hearing kind of like get introduced. Really kind of come to fruition on this track. Like you start hearing the introduction to the cocooning phase and to the its eventual like spiral that I think Kendrick's going to kind of illustrate for us. Starting in this phase of the album.
All right, nice. Josh, let's hear from you.
I like the themes that he's bringing up, where he's like illustrating the institutionalization of people that are like poverty stricken, right, and never get out of that, especially the people around him in Compton, where he's in the verses that he's talking about bringing his homies with him to like the BET Awards and shit, and they're all looking around like, damn, we could just jack all this fucking jewelry and all this other shit, and walking around. What's the exact line that he says? Fuck am I supposed to do when I'm looking at walking licks, right? As in like hits that they can go and yank a chain off of someone or lift a wallet or take someone's rollies and shit, and you see what he's referring to in terms of like the institutionalization, even though it's a quote unquote free area of just people living in a neighborhood. There's these walls that we're going to get into right now, right, in a bit, where there are barriers, right? There are socioeconomic barriers that hold people and maybe channel their actions towards a specific way of living, right? Because of these systemic, I guess, like nothing else to call it other than systemic racism and just things that are a part of the machinery that drives our society that is built in a way so like people, Black people, Latinos, minorities in general are all marginalized to the point where they tell us to like pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, but we all don't have fucking boots to wear and shit, or we're all starting at different fucking places, and it's just something that maybe isn't always acknowledged. And I'm going a bit off of the actual songs, like not necessarily, right, because it ties in, but I'm giving my own point of view a little bit more on this, to where I think he's illustrating that, right, as if it wasn't already very clear to all of us by way of the different music that we consume through culture, or just what we see on a daily fucking basis. I mean, we live in a city that has a huge chunk of the population under the poverty line, so it's a very stark, I guess, snapshot of real things that people face, like real mentalities that people think. Like it, and in a personal sense, oh shit, I didn't know how a little bit of that type of mindset it was in me until I had like very specific experiences where I was like riding around with a fucking gun in a truck looking for someone and shit. And I was like, what the fuck am I doing? Why am I even doing this shit? You know what I mean? And then like whatever, my life changed for the better after a bit. But I don't know. I think it just hit close to home for me in a certain sense. And I like that he brings forth those ideas where the institutionalization isn't just for people with literal physical walls, but there's these maybe lofty ideologies that have set up this current society that we're living in, that have in turn, institutionalized us into a specific path that we maybe can't see or veer off of.
All right, nice. So let me unmute Franny here, and maybe we can get a piece from him. I'm trying to unmute you, Fran. Can you unmute yourself? If you mute yourself on your end, then... Oh, he just peaced out.
All right, man. Franny.
He's like, nah, I'm not going to mute myself. Fuck you. And he just left.
All right, so Franny peaced out. I think we should just go ahead into the next song. And this next song is called These Walls. And I'll give my take on this. So I like I love the song, good song. Talking about the song in general. The title obviously plays off the expression of if these walls could talk. I do appreciate Kendrick's wordplay and in this song because he layers different walls throughout the song. Except he doesn't talk about the walls of Jericho, so I don't know how well I can like this song. But he talks about the walls of a woman's vagina, the walls of a prison, to the walls of his mind, and in this and he talks about this whole ordeal about how he uses his fame and power to convince a woman for sex, and it wasn't just any woman; it was a woman who gave birth to the child of the man that killed Kendrick's friend, and so he sees this as revenge for his friend, but ultimately his conscience gets the best of him, and because of the fact that he's using this power for evil purposes. I'm going to add Franny here to the stream real quick. So you kind of see this whole story of the walls of the vagina to the prison of his mind, and so on. For the production, I will say you got a good natural snare and bass style song that yet again goes into another funky beat. But it doesn't, I don't mind these funky beats because of the fact that they all seem so different and organic. It's not very reminiscent of like certain albums like Mac DeMarco's 2 that just plays the same damn thing over and over again and with different lyrics. So this one I can actually digest and take and appreciate. So Franny, I don't know if you want to talk about these walls or institutionalize or just, hang out in the back. I feel so bad for you because your connection's so bad.
I'm having way too many
You sound like a robot to me. You guys...
You sound like a guy fucking laryngectomy and shit.
You sound like you're using an Android.
You sound like you're trying to talk through a dildo.
It sounds like you're making macaroni in a pot.
Sounds like that good pussy, bro.
Yeah, man.
So, it's up to you if you want to leave or not. I would, it's up to you. Roger, you have yourself muted, so we can't hear your punchlines.
I was saying, like, you're basically saying, no, you should fucking leave. Like, that's so mean.
Yeah.
I'm taking over as a host.
You gotta make these
executive decisions,
bro. All right, can I talk about this song? Sorry.
Go for it.
Because this is my favorite song on this album.
Ooh.
And I have no idea why it's my favorite song. I think it's because it's like how I said earlier that like, actually I said this on another podcast where when people get personal and they get like a little bit more real and like mental health is such like a big thing to me that I'm in love with anything that when it comes to like to talking about it and expressing it. So like in this and like these walls, he talks about mental health and like the walls in his mind and stuff like that, and kind of like how he's to some degree embarrassed because this is not a thing that like a lot of men talk about. This is not something that you should express. You shouldn't be a weak-minded person, and yet here he is talking about it. And I think that like someone that kind of made that a little bit more possible in rap music is like Kanye West. Kanye West brought a lot of like vulnerability into rap music and stuff. Of course, he wasn't the first one, but like I'm saying, he was one of them to make it more acceptable. And there's a line in it where he talks about like the walls of like an apartment building. He's like, the landlord said these walls are vacant more than a minute. These walls are vulnerable. Exclamation! Interior pink color coordination. I integrate every nook and cranny. Well, it's kind of like, to me, like that interpretation is kind of like when you focus on everything and you're kind of like overwhelmed on the idea of like just paying attention to like the minor details, at least in my opinion. And it's just so fucking good. Like the beat is also so fucking like, the beginning of it's just really crazy where it's like that girl moaning and like I'm not sure if it's in pain or in just like in discomfort or something, but it's like a really weird introduction, and then it just jumps into this funky beat like the dun 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 dun, and then like the high pitched like melody that's in the background over like a deeper bass, and it's just so fucking put together so well, and it's such like a, to me it's such an easy listen to just close your eyes and like jam out to it, but like that is to me this is the easiest song to listen to because it's like the most digestible in my opinion, in the sense of like there's nothing crazy happening in the beat like that you have to focus all your energy on that, and there's like, and his flow isn't as tough or as intense as in any other song in my opinion. It's a very like, he's just kind of talking, but like with the flow obviously, and he's just kind of like talking about it. He's not like angry. He's not. If anything, the only emotion that he's expressing is shame, or confusion or something, And it's just such a good way of him delivering it that I just fucking love this goddamn song so fucking much because it's so easy to listen to. It's so beautiful and so well written. Yeah.
All right. Let's hear from you, Roger. What's your thoughts?
I again, like at this point, I think when you get to me, I usually just try to contribute something that's not already said. So, yeah, to those points, listenability, of course, I think it's one of the, if you had to introduce somebody to like a well-listenable song, I'd go like King Kunta, and maybe this song, right? Like those are the ones that I think would kind of, and is, I guess if we're gonna do a two-parter, I guess we'll say that for another time. But I really do think it is one of the more listenable ones. Now, the important thing to me, again, like we're talking about like the overarching theme, right? This is the one that expands on that eventual, culmination of the words that happen at the end. Well, before I get to that, actually, there's one thing there's, to me, like I really do like the allegory between like the mental prison, the actual prison, the walls of a woman's vagina, the all of these things that are kind of like just kind of subtly put in there, but at the same time not so subtle. I do think that when he talks, I want to say that part, and you'll know because he fucking points it out where he says that sentence so important. Right, where he says, "You pray for appeals, hoping the warden would afford them." He's talking about it's something that I've recently gotten really not into, but like have like noticed is that, or not noticed, but he's basically pointing out the institutionalized again, the how we have that like the what's it called, prison industrial complex, right?
The prison school pipeline.
Right. Yeah. So the idea that like the idea that like what matters most to prisons are how long your sentence is and how frequently black people are targeted for longer sentences, especially in like communities that are already like susceptible to like systemic violence and poverty and all these kind of things that just basically make it easier for prisons to fill up and get a check based on each head that's in there. So I thought that was a really cool like tie-in or like reference. But yeah, then we talk about the very end, right? Where he expands on the on the poem that's being read, right? He says, this one adds, sometimes it did the same, abusing my power full of resentment that turned into a deep depression, and I found myself screaming in a hotel room. And then that leads off to the next track, right? And I guess we'll talk about it more after Josh's take on this one.
All right, Josh, let's hear from you.
These Walls, man. It's a great track, you know, and it's interesting because it has like a very heavy, like towards the ending where he starts talking about getting with that person's say girlfriend or whatever, that the one that who said what murdered his friend, right, or something. Was that what happened? Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's such the contrast between the content of the song and the vibe that the instrumentation gives you and the delivery of the lyrics is one of the things that makes a good song, right? Like a lot of different songs do employ that type of oh shit, my dogs are fucking fighting and shit. Employs that type of tactic, right? Like in Hey Ya, where super upbeat and everything, and then if you listen to the lyrics, super like existentialist or a fucking point is. I think that the contrast between both is amazing, and the way that he builds up to it, where he kind of like just lulls you into thinking that he's addressing something that, you know, another artist can easily reproduce, or talking about like, oh yeah, like all these women and or what have you. But then he narrows it down to like that one specific thing that I'm not sure if it's something that he went through or something that he knows of that he put into the context of the song or what have you, but it shows you the weight of that decision to influence someone to cause harm, you know, like, and that is it's a weird thing. Like, I don't know if you've ever found yourself in a position like that where your actions could potentially, you know, like hurt someone, and you're maybe contemplating doing it because you want that fucking result, you know, and then if you catch yourself wanting that result, you take a step back and you look at yourself and you're like, whoa, what the fuck? Like, that's really fucked up. You know, and I think it's awesome when artists can let you into their heads in that sense, to where you see them not just I guess in Kendrick's sense, like being this super bona fide rap star that, you know, is just hits after hits and amazing and everything, but you see him as a flawed human trying to, again, levy his power to hurt someone. Right? And I just really like that, the way that it comes together in that way. That's my take on it.
Mm-hmm. All right, nice. Good to hear your take on that. Let's go ahead. I think this song.
Can I mention one thing? So sorry that like
Go ahead.
It's because it literally transitions into the next song where like he continues on with the poem that he's writing at the end, and he's like what does he say exactly? He says,
I already touched on that while you were peeing.
Oh, really? And then like, I was finding myself screaming in the hotel room.
Yeah,
right,
we're going to touch on that now, too.
That's pee-pees.
That's what happens when you pee. So now we're going to go ahead and talk about you, okay? Not me, you. So first off, I'll leave you guys talking about the transition from the last song to this song. But I'll say that you is very much a complete contrast from I, and you see this theme relatively throughout the album. Like you'll see For Free, For Sale, and various other songs that we'll talk about once we get there. And so we'll talk about I once we're there. But you is Kendrick pouring out his heart, like kind of going into his heart to expose and describe the negative thoughts that plague him. Thoughts that, like how he FaceTimed his friend after he got shot instead of actually visiting the hospital, and his friend eventually dying due to complications of issues that happened. It's hard to listen to a man pouring out his emotions, but and that's the kind of shock factor I think that people kind of need, because men have feelings too, and I'm pretty sure Josh will elaborate on that. But I commend Kendrick opening up his heart and telling us about his issues. And also, again, you hear a sax. A sax in this song sounds kind of like a noir movie, so I think it adds a great emotion instrumentally to Kendrick's opening up. So enough about what my take is on it. Orly, what's your take on you?
I love how it starts off with him just screaming, obviously, just like him basically being in a lot of fucking pain and a lot of hatred towards himself. I feel that he's just hating on himself a lot. Like, and then Loving You is complicated. In my opinion, it's just like he's talking to himself. Like you when it's like another person. Like he doesn't see himself as like himself. He just sees himself as a different person now because of like the way he's living his life. And he's like, loving you is complicated, loving you is complicated, loving you is complicated over and over. Because he's I think in my opinion, he's talking about self-love, and he's angry at himself for going through and the things that he's done, and then like everything that he's done badly. From how Josh said that he's like using his power to try to hurt someone, to the point where like how you said that he didn't even like visit his friend when he got shot, and with him ending up dying. And it's just like how I said, man, like when artists, it doesn't matter who it is, like it could be a musical artist, it could be a comedian, or it could be a screenwriter, when they involve emotion into it, and like something that they're either shameful of or they hate themselves for, and they involve that into their work, I think it's just so fucking insane. It's so fucking insane to me, and it's something that I strive for in my own personal creations of like me painting and shit like that, like hopefully begging that I can like portray an emotion or convey whatever I'm feeling at that moment when I paint. And Kendrick fucking does that 100%, and he fucking just does not have any mercy on himself and on the listener, just fucking like just burying you with these fucking emotions. And you know, he basically almost like he's angry crying while fucking rapping this goddamn song, you know, like he's fucking crying his ass off just fucking rapping, and he's just so fucking mad that he can't do anything, like so angry to the point where like tears are just falling, you know, because you can't do anything else, you can't let it out in any other form. And I think that's just so fucking great that he can do that. That's my take.
All right, nice. Roger, let's hear your take on You.
Yeah, man. It's so. I mean, nobody's mentioned this, but so we got before To Pimp a Butterfly was released, we got the singles King Kunta, and we got the single I. Right now, there's a very like significant reason why it was released this way. I was released. In case I'm not sure if you guys have noticed this, and I'm going to talk about it either way because I know we're going to get it. We'll get into it in like the second half. But when I was released, it was released as a full song, right? Like a studio version of the song, right? Then when it was released in, what is that sound? Am I hearing something?
My neighborhood's throwing up fireworks, so I'm going to mute myself.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. So the yeah, man. So I was released studio version. Then when you hear I in the album, it's got a live track that he's performing at a concert in front of people, and the song doesn't even finish. Right, it doesn't reach like its full culmination. It actually gets cut off because of violence happening at the actual concert itself, which he addresses in a speech that he gives. Right now, why does that happen, and why is that important? Right, well. I was supposed to be this like really flashy, like a lot of people said Kendrick was on his NBA jingle writing shit, right? And they mentioned that, and it was true because they took and they turned it into the theme for the finals, I think that year, for the NBA finals. So that was his thing. Like he was doing that, and that is very much removed from, I guess, the overall theme. And if you notice that. That song I is like very much different from the rest of the album. So I think there's a fucking train coming by. You is the antithesis to I, right? Because I is that self-love, very much promoting himself as like a strong black man who within his own community is giving back and finding a way for self-love. I think You is self-hatred. Right, he talks a lot about depression. He talks a lot about his alcoholism and his suicidal tendencies. Right, and he does mention those things. That very last lyric, right, when he goes, "You know, money won't stop a suicidal weakness." Right, I'm paraphrasing. I don't know. I don't have the lyrics in front, but I'm pretty sure that's how it ends. But my favorite thing about this album is it's very. Already you mentioned it. It's 100% him talking to himself. He's drunk, yelling in the mirror. Right, that's the whole thing. That's the reason why it ends on the other track before this. These Walls. It talks about how he was alone in a hotel room screaming. That it starts with the scream, and he's alone by himself drunk. You can hear the bottles clanking and during that little interlude also, or the break, I mean, and when you hear the person knocking, the housekeeping lady, and he's just in there drunk as shit, yelling at himself, realizing in his sense, I guess, what a piece of shit he's been, and how he's basically sold, or he's allowed himself to be pimped by this system, and letting himself become somebody who he was not supposed to be or not comfortable being. So he's, like he says, a friend wouldn't leave Compton for profit, right? And like things like that. So he's very much doing a lot of self reflection here. And Kendrick himself talks about this being the hardest song that he's ever written, or the song that's been the hardest to write. So he mentions that it's no secret when right before this album was released, after the success of Good Kid, Mad City, the subsequent fallout with his friends, and the drama that went on with Black Hippie, he was dealing with a lot of depression because of of that fallout, of the conflict going on with his friends, of the conflict with himself that he's been having. So this is a really good reflection song on it. And I just think that Kendrick, you mentioned earlier, Arnold, that Quasimodo sound where he's not afraid to change like the inflection or his tone, and he kind of just warps his words or warps his voice to match like emotion. In this one, when he's doing like, you can hear his voice cracking. He's like, "They never leave Compton for profit." Like you hear that shit like going on. And if you listen to it, like I would think, wow. Like if you just listen to that part, I'd think like this is kind of weird, right? But you listen to it in the context of the album, and you realize this dude is fucking hurting. Like he's literally putting his fucking soul out, reflecting that in his voice. So I really like this song as like its own condensed narrative of just like Kendrick being alone in a room, drunk, crying, and reflecting on his past self. Was one thing where I remember me and my friend, when we talked about this, we did mention that one song, like "You Ain't Call," like you that little thing, right? It's like he's giving himself such a beating down on himself over not even bothering to give a fucking phone call. Right, and it's like you didn't call, you didn't try, like all those little parts at the end. It just, yeah, man. He speaks through all this stuff, even like mentioning things that he's like, you should have killed yourself a long time ago. It's like you mentioned, a very hard song to listen to, but also a very I guess, satisfying in the terms of like a well condensed and well structured narrative. So yeah.
What song are we on?
All right, I like that take.
You.
Okay, we're on
you. Yeah, so go ahead, Josh.
You, dude. You. All right. I don't know. I don't have much to add to what I caught from the end of what Roger was saying was like more or less the thing I was going to take. So kind of took the words out of my mouth. And one of the things, and I'm pretty sure you guys already highlighted this, but like the vulnerability of this song is what makes it fucking amazing. And I think that's my biggest takeaway from it. And it goes back to what I was saying from the track before, to where like when artists get real vulnerable, that's when the music that comes out, it just transcends the time that it's released in, and it gives it that timelessness quality. I think is when artists are the most vulnerable or the most real, and that it definitely bleeds through in this fucking song.
For sure.
Yeah, very true. So I think we're gonna go ahead and cut it off here. We're gonna do part 2 at another time. But before we do that, do you guys have anything to plug? Orly, do you got anything you need to plug?
Well, you can check out my podcast, Nosy. You can find it on my Facebook page at Nosy Podcast. Hopefully,
how do you spell that?
It's gonna be NOSY and then podcast PODCAST. But another thing that I'm very excited about, I already started my next series of paintings. I'm going to have 5 new paintings. It's going to be talking about human connection, and also this is going to be trademark, motherfuckers. No one fucking steal my goddamn idea. But I had a whole new make it an interactive experience. So, oh, look at that little doggy.
Puppy.
I have an interactive experience. Each painting that I'm going to paint, I'm going to listen to one specific song to it. So I'm going to make a playlist. So when you go to my art show, if I do get to have one soon, I'm going to have a playlist for each painting. I'm going to a song for each painting, so you can listen to the song that I listened to while I painted it. So you can probably be a little bit more in my shoes or in the emotional state that I was while painting that specific painting.
All right, and then hopefully we can talk about why you picked those songs and how they made you feel eventually on this podcast. So
hopefully,
if you want to do that, I'm glad to do that.
Also, follow me on Instagram at Zaw_gang.
All right, Roger. Roger, what you got?
Just the same stuff, man. If you're listening to this, you're listening to Hindsight 2020 on the Aliens on the Border network. So just go follow Aliens on the Border and take a look at all the content that we've got there. We've got our main podcast, Aliens on the Border. We've got my little mini limited run, which I'm going to be starting again. The Lockdown Listens. Just to follow me on Instagram at shbabyisokay. And there's
such a great
there's what else? Cultivarte Laredo. There's some weird shit going on with the city as far as they're trying to reappropriate funds in the middle of a pandemic in terms of taking away money from the public arts fund that we campaigned for and got passed, and they're trashing things like local art, like they call the mural by Mauro Martinez, the one that's next to the outlet mall that says No dejes de soñar. They trashed it and said it was just graffiti. Well, first off, graffiti is an art form, but that message in itself has its own condensed value that it gives towards people who are dreamers. He apparently painted it with dreamers in mind, and a couple of other things that just in general, not to stop aspiring. That there's dreams to be chased, and this the councilman just decided to trash it and then go back and start talking about how the money that's currently been raised for public arts, that the city should oversee it. And I don't think it's going to be any surprise to anybody if we see it get mismanaged, if that's the case. So go and follow Cultivarte Laredo. They do a lot of we do a lot of stuff for promoting the arts and stuff, and I'm planning on doing a Meet the Artist online sometime soon. And just follow the mic drop. We don't really have anything going on. I kind of decided that virtual comedy shows kind of suck. So I decided to not do them anymore. But we go support the Cultura Beer Garden, who's the people that not only do they support our podcast and the mic drop, but they just support the arts in general. Orly had his first show there, and right now they're currently having because of the shutdowns, they're having to kind of switch and try to do whatever they can to stay afloat. So help them out, buy some beer to go, some delivery stuff. If you can't drink, go and get some non-alcoholic beverages. They have a non-alcoholic IPA now, apparently. And you can go and hit up the food trucks there as well. So, just put that in for a plug.
All right. Being an edge person, I'm definitely going to try that IPA next time. So, Josh, you got anything?
Nah, man. Just listen to everything we put out and support us. And if you don't...
And Fat Camp, dude. Talk about Fat Camp.
Everyone knows what's up, man. I don't have to say anything.
Okay, well, dude, come on, man.
We're trying to not be fat, and that's about it, dude. Fat Camp. We got custom T-shirts just for us. If you want to look cool,
not for you guys, but
what the fuck? Where's mine, dude? I've been working my ass off.
Where is yours, dude? That's a good fucking question, man. That's a great question. Was the Loch Ness Monster real? That's another great question. There's many great questions throughout the history of time, but really the question is, why haven't you subscribed yet? That's the real question. Please go ahead and do so. Follow us everywhere. And this is the official podcast network for Texas. And
are we just going to take
it? Yeah, Texas is all yours, bro. Texas.
Yeah, dude. We're out there trying to pretend to be us, but they can't be us. We're just us.
They hate us because they ain't us.
They hate us.
Because they anus.
No, just anus at the end.
They hate us.
All right.
it's all love. Everyone out there, you know, if you follow us and keep up and have a good time with us. And this was fun. I can't wait to do part 2. Y'all have a good one, man. Thank you for having me, Arnold and Franny.
All right.
You're not here.
So I will say, you know, Franny extends his apologies. Sorry for his internet issues. I'm going to end it off how he usually ends it. I believe it goes to something about take care of yourselves, and we love you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Kisses.